Brighton v Chelsea 1983. September 1983, and Chelsea's Headhunters head to the seaside resort of Brighton in their thousands. A notorious hooligan firm, warm weather, seaside resort, low policing, and angry local hooligans. What could possibly go wrong? Here are the stories from people who were there. First, we have Andy, who told us, 1983-4 saw Chelsea starting to build for the new era and a return to the big time, culminating in an away trip to Grimsby on the last day of the season that saw all sorts of trouble. Champions of Division 2. But it all started that season with a 5-0 home win against Derby County and an away win at Brighton, 2-1, on the 3rd September 1983. What a fateful day this was going to be. I believe the capacity at the old Goldstone ground was around 32,000, so I can't understand why the official figure for this game was only £20,874. Video evidence supports that the ground was packed and overfilled. This was not just a game of violence and unbelievable scenes. The whole weekend was apparently the same, with hundreds of Chelsea supporters travelling down to the south coast on the Friday night and running riot all evening against the police and local lads. I was a 17-year-old lad at the time and was working part-time for Waitrose, shelf filling and up in the warehouse. My mate Brian was also working in the warehouse. We were both Chelsea supporters, and this game was fast approaching, but we were both supposed to be working. Money was tight, and I spent most of my money on clothes from the start of the casual era. Pringle jumpers cost most of my weekly money, and Friday and Saturday nights out took most of the rest. But I still had enough to go watch Chelsea home and away. Things were much cheaper in those days. We came across a promotion on Purcell automatic washing powder to get free train tickets on British Rail, so we set about removing them from damaged packs until we had enough. Then on that day, the job didn't last much longer. We both cashed in our tokens for free travel and went on the train early in the morning down to Brighton. Our train was packed, standing room all the way, full to the brim with Chelsea fans. We got off the train at Brighton and the roar went up. Chelsea, Chelsea, Chelsea. This was an early train and got in around noon. From the station to the ground, it was just a sea of Chelsea supporters everywhere. Not a Brighton supporter to be seen anywhere. Thousands upon thousands. I didn't see any trouble on the way to the ground, but then there was no one around to have trouble with. We got to the Goldstone, and Chelsea were everywhere, singing and having fun. It was a nice day. We got in the ground early, as it was obvious there was a chance of fans being locked out. The away terracing we were in swelled until you literally couldn't move, but it became clear that Chelsea were everywhere in the ground on all four sides. In all honesty, I can't remember there being any home fans at all, but I'm sure there were. Perhaps faced with overwhelming numbers, they converted for their own safety. It was a strange atmosphere, like a home game but away. Dixon scored a penalty to put us 1-0 up in the first half. I had heard the phrase "the biggest bounce of all time," and when the ball hit the net, it was just immense. My feet didn't touch the ground for minutes afterwards, and the whole ground erupted. Into the second half, and on 76 minutes, Alan Young scored for Brighton. I don't think many celebrated the goal. I mean, it wouldn't have been wise, but then on 81 minutes, Kerry got his second, and the ground erupted again. We didn't stop celebrating until the final whistle, which is when the real trouble began. There were no Brighton fans to fight, so at the final whistle, Chelsea supporters poured onto the pitch. Stupidly, they could have been left just to enjoy and celebrate, but the outnumbered police decided to take them on. I watched as a police officer was engulfed by the crowd. I must admit I felt sorry for him. Many police were injured that day when they could have just allowed fans to celebrate. One of the goals was smashed up, but eventually the crowd abated back to the stands and we made our way back to the train station for the journey home. The crowd of 20,074 just couldn't be correct. The ground was packed solid. Who knows what the real figure was or how many got in unaccounted. Reports were that 8,000 Chelsea were there, but I would say double that at least. Maybe treble. It was a different era, of course, and Chelsea player Chris Hutchings was fined £250 for encouraging the fans onto the pitch and then telling a police officer to feck off. Top Chelsea attitude, that. This was going to be Chelsea's promotion season, but we didn't know it at the time. This game and attendance would have been fitting for a final game of the promotion season, and that was away to Grimsby. But that's a story for another day. Plenty of evidence around in match reports and even on Brighton's own fan sites. Another cracking day out, Brighton fan Terry told us. Chelsea 1983. The day that even a Chelsea player got arrested. The trouble had occurred on September the 3rd, 1983, when Hutchings was a Chelsea player. It was the Albion's first ever league game against the Blues and is generally considered to have been the scene of the worst outbreak of football hooliganism that the Goldstone ground ever saw. The Friday evening before the game saw running battles across Brighton and Hove between Chelsea fans, Brighton youths and the police. There were even rumours of Portsmouth's 657 crew getting involved in the trouble, although I never saw anyone from Pompey myself. I believe 10 people got stabbed that night, and a car full of petrol bombs was found in the back streets of Brighton, presumably by Brighton hooligans, in an attempt to quell the Chelsea onslaught. Brighton have always had an hooligan element, much to some firms' surprise when visiting the old Goldstone ground in the 70s and 80s. This weekend was no different. By the time 3 p.m. the following day rolled around, there was a tense and somewhat terrifying atmosphere around the Goldstone, with 8,000 Blues supporters having infiltrated every corner of the ground among the crowd of 20,874, helped by the Albion's spectacularly stupid decision not to make the meeting with one of the most psycho fan bases in the country at the time all ticket. Chelsea won the match 2-1, 2 goals from Kerry Dixon, rendering Alan Young's fantastic debut overhead kick as nothing more than a consolation. At the final whistle, Chelsea supporters invaded the pitch from all sides of the ground to launch a vicious attack on the police in the centre circle, knocking 2 of them unconscious. Innocent fans were attacked inside and outside the ground and hospitalised in scenes reminiscent of a war zone. They even pulled down the North Stand goal. While the riot was going on, Hutchings began clapping the travelling fans, which was seen by the police as encouraging and inciting the mayhem. One officer of the law told him to get off the pitch. Hutchings said no. Again, he was told to leave the playing area. This time, Hutchings replied with, "Feck off," and ran away down the tunnel, where he was promptly arrested for threatening and abusive behaviour. A few weeks later, he signed for Brighton on the same day he was fined £250 by Brighton Court. We still sing a song about him from time to time, as he went on to be one of our heroes. After the match, Chelsea fans went on the rampage, as you might have guessed, overturning cars and attacking the police, and anybody that wasn't Chelsea, basically. I and my mates took a terrible kicking after we failed to name the Chelsea team when our cover got broken by some cocky gangsters on Parkview Road. We ended up in Brighton General Hospital for a concussion, bruises and other stuff. I was told the riot went on until the next day even. Even while being treated at the hospital, you could hear the commotion, and the walking wounded were arriving in A&E, and others delivered by ambulance. I even saw a few police who looked in a bad way. Never seen anything like it, and pray I never will. We thank Andy and Terry for their recollections. It's clear that Chelsea completely overwhelmed the Brighton police and locals in an incredible show of support for their team. 10,000 headhunters invading surely deserved greater policing. But there you go, the 80s for you. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe, as it really helps our channel grow.